Hi, I'm John Giertych with Yaskawa America Motion Division, and I want to take a couple minutes to share with you a trick that I found when using the Movicon screen development software for our SmartPanel HMIs. And what I wanted to go over was aliasing. So if you've been through the basic class, you'll find that we've had a part of our training goes over setting up screens for jog, and it allows you to set the acceleration speeds and what have you. And so if you were to look at the screen that I have up right now, that is part of our training screen. It gives you particular values that you can adjust. So if you were to actually look at the variables associated, so like this one here, let's ungroup it, and we actually take a look at the variable associated with that particular display box, you'll see that it's set up to a global variable, and that global variable is set up for the X jog velocity. And then on this one, it would be the X jog acceleration. This one would be the deceleration, et cetera, et cetera. So, and in the training, what you'd end up doing is you create 3 of these screens. As you'll see over here on my screen, you'll see that I have an X axis, a Y axis, a Z axis, and then I created this new one that's called multi-axis. So this goes along with what you would have had in the Movicon basic training from us. So what I did was, because of the way that these screens are, all these variables are addressed, I wanted to be able to more dynamically change those. Rather than creating 3 different screens, I'd rather have just one particular screen, or I wanted to not have to edit the screen file to be able to go in and make quick changes to those values. If I did want to just copy the screen and reutilize the symbols that were on there, just readdress them. So what I found was that, and I'll take you over to the Y-axis screen that I have open here. So I've got the 4 screens open, right? X-axis, Y-axis, Z, and then the multi. So on Y-axis, what I did was I created screen aliases. So on the screen aliases, I have these now set, instead of to the global variables that you saw on the edit box display before, I created aliases and have them set up for internal variable tags, because I'm not currently connected up to a MP3300 motion controller. So I just use internal variables, made them retentive so that we could see that those values are changing. I left the X-axis alone because I wanted it to be as an example of how it would look if you were directly connected to variables associated with the motion controller. So anyway, so for the Y-axis, you'll see that I set all these screen variables up, or aliases up, and assign tags to them. And then when I go over to the Z-axis, I did the exact same thing. And except for Y now, you'll see where it said Z jog accel, Z jog decel, so on and so forth. So, and all that's done is when you're at the screen level, you set up and you go into this edit aliases mode, and you can have different aliases, and you can just set them up as you want. If you want to create a new one, you create a new one, you set up whatever value would be associated with it. I'll go ahead and delete that one since I don't want it in there. And then when you look at the actual variables in each of these locations, if I were to pull up like this decel, now you have to address that differently, because before it was associated with a tag. So now you come over here and you'll see that it is associated with this alias. And the alias terminology has the 2 left arrows, then the alias that it's going to be assigned to it, and then 2 right arrows. And you do that with all the different variables on your screen that you want to have aliases assigned to. And so now, if you go into a runtime, let's just do a quick save because I had that one little change to the X-axis. And let's close all these screens down for a second. And if I go into runtime and I switch over to the manual screens, now in the X mode, you'll see that all the variables are set, or everything is showing as 0 because it's trying to connect to the motion controller that's not connected. So it's going to give us the errors down here that it couldn't connect. But if I go to Y, since those are retained variables associated within the into the Movicon program, it's got variables that I can actually read. So it'll show you that you've got the 300, and you can adjust all that. If you go to Z-axis, it does the same thing. Those are all done by the aliasing now. But the one screen that I haven't shown you yet really is the multi-axis. So, and where this comes into play is I didn't want to have 3 different screens for 3 different axes. I wanted one screen It's easier for me to look at in my project tree. It allows me to, instead of copying and pasting that whole screen, it gives me a chance to just have one thing to go back and modify if I decide to make a change. So I went to this multi-axis. And what multi-axis did was it took those same variables and it assigns them so that if I want to look at X, I've got X variables assigned. If I want to go to Y, I have Y, or Z, Z-axis. And I can do all these without having to switch out of the individual screens. So let me show you what that code looks like when we're out of runtime so you can see how to adjust those aliases. So we're going to stop the runtime. And then we'll open up that multi-axis screen. And what I did was, if you look at the actual individual buttons, first let's look at the aliases. So on the aliases, all the aliases remain the same as I had before, but now instead of a variable tag, I've left that completely blank. And those aliases now will be assigned based on which button I push. So when I go to the button, if you set the command so that it is an execute command, and then you set your command variables. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So for the x-axis, I have multiple commands associated with that one button. If I were to look at each one of these individually, you'd see that what I'm doing is on the jog minus alias, I am setting that alias to a value, and it's just the text string of the actual tag that I would want associated with it. So if you have a long variable that you're using within your motion controller, like where you might have it set up for global variables underscore, and the structure gets very long, this might become a little bit tedious to type this in. So you can always copy and paste from the properties of the tag itself. But if you know it and your structures are fairly short, you should be able to just type that quickly in. So so there's my first command, my second command, and this mouse jog plus gives the X jog plus request. If I keep on going down, now I'm at the position valid bit for the indicator light. And so all I'm doing, let's go ahead and cancel that. So if you look at the Y side and I look at those values, everything is the same, except now instead of X jog request, right, now I'm at the Y jog minus request. And if I go to this one here, you'll see that all I've done is I've just changed that quick value. So now I have 3 buttons that change, and all they do is they're changing the individual commands from the X to the Y to the Z, and it automatically changes all those aliases for us and allows me to have a single screen that you can jump back and forth at and not have to deal with a bunch of different screens. So actually right now, in my program, I could actually delete this X-axis, delete this Y-axis, and delete the Z-axis, strictly have the one multi-axis screen, and it could take care of all that. So show you that one more time. I go back to the manual screen. We've had it set up through training that we would have multiple tabs across this. If we go to multi-axis, if there's no axis that's been selected, I've got a little flasher on there that's the very last command that you saw under the command buttons, was to go ahead and set a value here to make this flash or not if there's nothing been selected. But go to X, go to Y, go to Z. One screen does it all for all 3. So when you get into those multi-axis systems that have 16, 17, 18 different axes to them, you don't have to have that many screens. You can do this all with just a couple of buttons on the screen, or I haven't tried it yet, but you could use a drop-down box as well and just select which axis you want to run. Anyway, I wanted to show that to you. Hope you have a great day and enjoy using the Mobicon's software. Thank you.